Which Eagles receiver makes for the better play in the FFPC Playoff Challenge? Should a pair of Ravens be faded in favor of a different member of the flock in the challenge as well? And what else do you need to know before you build those FFPC Playoff Contest lineups next week? Plus, the $1 million grand prize winner in the 2024 Fantasy Pros Championship, Mike Mehlberg, will join us to discuss how he constructed his team, what Week 17 was like for him, and so much more. We've got a great show for you. Ferrell Elliott is here live in Las Vegas. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts now.
Can't stand the pressure. I've seen greater men than need a lesson.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now watching the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott.
Solace in the scripture. Are we not all our father's sons? I became a man. Nobody ever told me what a man was.
Hey, thank you, Rob. Welcome in to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour for Friday, January 3rd, 2025. Greetings and salutations to all the Balkaholics and Ferrelliacs tuning in. This is the latest episode of the HSFF Hour presented by the Fantasy Football Players Championship over at myffpc.com. I'm your slightly above average host. My co-host is the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Mr. Ferrell Elliott. Coming up on tonight's show, Ferrell and I are going to go hard on what we expect from the Bills and Chiefs in the world-famous FFPC Playoff Challenge, and the newest FFPC millionaire, Mike Mehlberg, will join us to break down the Niners offense, what we missed about the Bucs passing game in 2024, and so much more. If you want to connect with us on X, you can do so at hsffhour, at Eric Balkman, and always check out the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship at KFFSC.com. Facebook.com/hsffhour is where to go as well there, and email us at highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com. If you have any questions for us, now is the last time to send them in for tonight's episode. We'll try to get to all the chat room questions, the X posts, and emails, and our fantasy feedback segment coming up later on at the bottom of the hour. Thanks to our audio engineer and my best friend, Bryce, and of course, our producer and mutual friend, Rob. If you are looking for some fantasy postseason fun, look no further than myffpc.com. That's myffpc.com. The world-famous FFPC Playoff Challenge is live. We'll have all the players loaded up in there once we know the final two teams in the playoffs this season. There's no draft or no salary cap. You're just choosing the 12 players you want and watching them ride throughout the playoffs. There is a $500,000 grand prize and a $100,000 grand prize. You can enter for $200. You can enter for $35. Either way, you have a chance at winning some serious cash to start off 2025 and end the 2024 fantasy season. Don't forget about the FFPC Weekly Challenge. There is no draft, there is no salary cap, and we will have that available to you right now. 4:30 at Saturday kickoff, 1 p.m. Sunday kickoff. So two separate challenges there. You can join both those, $35 or $200 to enter, and you can win up to $2,500 in Week 18. It's the last weekly challenge of the year. Just go to myffpc.com, myffpc.com. Remember to like, subscribe, comment, share this video with your enemies and friends, and get notified each and every time we go live, which will be coming up next week, Tuesday. More on that coming at the end of the show, and I'll tell you what's going on there. We are having some technical issues from Las Vegas with Ferrell Elliott, where he's at this week. So we will pivot and bring on our guest right away, ladies and gentlemen. This is a guy who is a 7-time FFPC High Stakes League winner, but no victory was as sweet as the one that he achieved Monday night when he became the newest member of the FFPC Millionaire Club after winning the 2024 Fantasy Pros Championship. I'll tell you this right now, and I should have this up at the top, and I don't, so I'm trying right now. I'm vamping for time here. You can follow him on X at Mike Mehlberg, MikeMehlberg, the pride of Appleton, Wisconsin, Mr. Mike Mehlberg. Mike, welcome in, man. How you doing tonight?
Hi, Belky. How are you?
I'm living. I'm not doing as good as you, man. Millionaire. This has got to feel great for you. So glad you're joining us on the program tonight. Before we get started with the fantasy football portion, tell the listeners not only why you live in the greatest city in the world, in Appleton, Wisconsin. Tell us what you're doing for a living right now when you're not crushing $1 million contests with the FFPC.
I work at McKinley Paper for 30 years.
Wow.
And, yeah, I enjoy my job, and that's where I've been at the last 30 years.
And I found out through one of my colleagues at my local radio station, your brother, I believe, works at my favorite local butcher shop, meat market, whiskey and beer outlet, Nemus Southside Market. Is that true?
Yes, he does. Yes.
Perfect. Okay, that's fantastic. So we're all bringing it together. We're giving Nemus a free shout out nationwide tonight. This is great. So 30 years, man. Are you coming up on retirement?
I'm not sure yet what my plans are long term, but
$1 million would help out, right?
Yes. No more overtime, I can tell you that.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yes, that's awesome. So let's get into this right now. What was it like watching week 17? I don't even know where you were in the standings. I knew you were up close at the top, but what was it like watching that final week for you? And what did you do, the first thing you did when you realized you became an FFPC millionaire?
Week 17 was just such a roller coaster. I was in second place going into week 17. But after the Christmas game, the Thursday game, and the 2 Saturday games, go to bed Saturday night, I was 99th place. And that's how close this competition is. And I was going into Monday night because I had most of my players going into Sunday, and they all did well again. And going into Monday night's game, I was in first by 16 points. But I knew it was going to be a track meet with Detroit and the Niners. And it was. I watched the first play or the first kickoff in the third quarter. Detroit got the ball and went right down the field, scored a touchdown. And at that point, it was 21-21 with over 10 minutes left in the third quarter. And they were just going up and down the field, and there was no punting. And I only had one player left, and that was George Kittle. So it was over emotional. I was, of course, nervous, and my daughter could sense that. And she says to me, "Daddy, let's go for a walk."
How old's your daughter?
17.
17. Okay.
Yeah.
And you're obviously watching this at home, right? In your living room or whatever. Okay, got it.
Yep. And she says, "Let's go for a walk." And that's what I did. I turned the TV off, and we went for a walk. And on that walk, she says, "Instead of watching the game, I'll look at the standings, and I'll let you know where we're at, you're at." A lot less stressful.
Exactly.
So that's what the plan was. She said after the game, so 10:30, she was going to check the standings and let me know where I was. But it wasn't quite 10:30. It was like 10:20, and I got a phone call. It was my brother saying that, "Congratulations." I'm like, "For what? What did I do? What?" And he goes, "You took first, and you're the newest champ." And I'm like, and then it took over. And before you know it, a few seconds later, I was receiving another phone call. It was my other brother, and I knew I was the next FFPC millionaire.
So that was at like 20 after 10.
Yes, and my daughter was going to wait till 10:30.
Right, exactly. So then she calls, you tell her, "I already know," right? And I don't even know what that euphoria must be. I mean, you just had to sit down, right? And then just
emotions took over. I was stunned. I didn't expect it because, like I said, I only had George Kittle, and with all the scoring going on, and Detroit and San Francisco going up and down the field, I really didn't expect to take first at that point with being such a high scoring game.
Exactly. So that's like 10:20 Central Time we're talking about on Monday night. How late did you stay? If that happened to me, I don't know if I would have been able to sleep for a couple of days. How long
Okay,
did you make it?
I was up till about 1:30, maybe 2 o'clock, and I had to wake up at 4 the next morning to work 12-hour days,
Oh,
and
God.
that's what I did. I went into work a few hours later to work my 12-hour shift, and then I had another friend call me to see, hey, what are you doing New Year's Eve? Let's go. I said, well, on New Year's Day I have 12-hour shift. He says, you didn't retire yet? I'm like, no, no, I didn't retire.
So that's interesting. So you end up going to work on like 2 hours sleep. Did your colleagues at work, did they know about this? Were you getting high fives and everything?
No, actually, I have an office, and nobody comes out and visits unless they have problems. And
It's a very solitary place that you're in.
Yes.
Even
yes.
then, Mike, weren't you just shaking all day that first day?
It was
How
exciting.
did you even focus?
Yes, it was hard to focus. It was hard to focus for 2 weeks at work, being so close, in the standings and so much on the line.
So obviously the best part of it was actually winning. What was the worst part of championship round? Was it just waiting for the games to start?
Yeah, waiting for I couldn't wait for it to get over. I mean, the stress was intense. I mean, my brother asked me years ago, he said, oh, wouldn't that be awesome just to be in that position going into the last week to be up that high? And I said, yes, just give me that chance. But when I got the chance, I'm like, wow, this is, like I said, it was a roller coaster, up and down, up and down. So it worked out.
Yes, it did work out. Now, coming into the championship round, I want to say you were in about 340th, 350th place, somewhere around there, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So then week 15, you put up a 212. You got to feel awesome about that. 226 in week 16, you're like, oh my God, my team is peaking at the right time. 191 in week 17. I know it coming into the championship round, there's 340 plus teams ahead of you. You're probably thinking, I had a good showing and a good season. We'll see what happens. But you're not seriously thinking you're to be a millionaire. At what point during week 15, 16, and 17 did you really think like this could actually happen? Was it not until that Monday night game, or did you have an inkling before that?
I think after week 16, when I put up that 226, and then after that week, I was in second place. Then I thought, my players are getting hot at the right time, and I really have a chance at winning this thing and taking it down, and that's what happened. So,
a lot of times when we have people on, I shouldn't say a lot, but sometimes when we have people on who win this big grand prize, they will have drafted the team very late, like within a few days of the season starting, or within a week of the season starting. This team that you had drafted, Mike, was drafted about a month before the season started in early August. I'm gonna bring it up right now as far as what your draft actually looked like, so we can hammer this home a little bit better. Do you recall any like ADP values that you got drafting a month earlier? Because obviously when we get close to the season, everybody has the same information. Like there's no sleepers, there's nothing like that. But when you're drafting in early August ahead, there's still preseason football going on. You can get certain deals on players. Do you recall in this draft, like when you look back on it, and maybe you haven't looked back on it since you won, but you're like, oh, there's no way I would have gotten that guy in February, or there's no way I would have gotten that guy in July or September or anything like that. Do you recall any values that you got in that draft?
I thought Justin Jefferson at 1.8, I thought was a value. Considering last year, I thought he went like 1 or 2, and I thought that was a value. And Barkley, I think he fell to me at 2.5, so that's 18 overall. And I couldn't believe, some of the experts were down on him this year. Considering he played with the Giants the last 2 years, he had double-digit touchdowns, and they're a lot worse offensive line, and defenses could key on him. And now going to Philadelphia with a much better offensive line, and defenses just couldn't key on Barkley because they got A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Goddard. and of course Jalen Hurts. So you can't focus on just that. But a lot of experts were sort of down on him, and I didn't understand why. So I think that maybe that's why he slipped a little bit to the mid-second round.
Speaking of experts, are there any analysts that I know what you posted on X? Are there any analysts you want to put give a shout out to that helped you win this $1 million?
Yes, I listen. Pat Thorman, I think, from Established the Run, I think is one of the best out there, along with Evan Silva and Adam Levitan. I listen to them podcast, and of course you and Ferrell and Terp. I think Terp knows ball. I think he makes the podcast always so interesting, the live drafts, because you can tell he knows fantasy, and he's impressive.
Yeah, Terp is always he's the foil for Ferrell for sure. I love it when those guys go. Sometimes I have to referee, but I'm cool with refereeing between those guys. That's always fun. He'll be back for live draft coverage in 2025. I'm looking at the draft here, and you point out, I think Jefferson and Aaron Jones. You got Jefferson at the 108, Aaron Jones at the 605. I think part of that was because we were in flux about the Minnesota quarterback situation. Like we weren't sure if it was, and I don't remember exactly when JJ McCarthy got hurt, but we didn't know. I mean, we kind of thought it was going to be Darnold at least to start off the season, but we didn't know how good he was going to be. And I don't know about you, but I've been shocked at what I've seen from him when he started playing like an MVP type guy. You had to be like, oh my God, this Jefferson and Jones picks are going to be money this year.
Exactly. I wasn't sure when the JJ McCarthy injury happened also, if it was before or after my draft, but it worked out so good that Darnold looked as good as he did. So that helped Jefferson. And then, in the third round too, I mean, for Devonta Adams to fall to 3.8, he's always been a target hog. And I thought that was a surprise also. So
I can tell you, I just looked it up right now. You drafted this team August 11th. McCarthy went down August 10th. So it was literally the day before you had drafted this team. The Brian Thomas pick was money. Cade Otton obviously helped you out at the 1405. And then Baker Mayfield at the 2005. We'll get into that in a little bit too. But that was fantastic. And I think that so let's talk about the fourth round pick in Brandon Ayuk. I can't remember. I'll have to look it up. Do you recall if he was signed by this point? I feel like he was still unsigned on August 11th.
I don't recall. I always figure players are going to sign. They always threaten to hold out, but when it comes down to it, they want their money like everybody else. So eventually they're going to come in. And so that's how I looked at it. And Ayuk had a great year last year. He averaged 16 points a week. But this year, before the injury, he wasn't looking all that great. He only averaged maybe 8 or 9 points. But then he went down, and Cade Otton had an outstanding few weeks there. I think there was like 3 weeks in a row where he averaged over 27 points, and that carried me.
It carried you, and this is what we're talking about. So, you drafted Ayuk at the 405. He signed August 30th. So about 3 weeks after you drafted him, he signs. His ADP then goes up. He goes down October 20th. One of the biggest beneficiaries of that in that Niners offense was George Kittle, who you took in the 5th round. So even though you lost Ayuk, you actually benefited with George Kittle. And to your point about Cade Otton, the weeks that he was going crazy, it was when Mike Evans was hurt. So he was taking a lot of those routes, a lot of those catches. And and Mike, you've been playing fantasy football for a long time. Sometimes it's just those little pockets, man, that can just get you to the league playoffs, get you to a championship, and then get you into the championship round. And that's what happened here. It all just seemed to fit together here for you.
It did. Yeah, with Chris Godwin going down also, and the Mike Evans injury. It just, Cade Otton was there, and he was catching everything. So it worked out.
It did. Mike, the other thing I should bring up here, you did not draft a quarterback until round 12, and I love this. I love waiting on a quarterback. You take the 14th quarterback off the board in Caleb Williams, good upside play, a guy who could do numbers this year. We didn't know, but sometimes you get a deal on the guys we don't know about. But Baker Mayfield in round 20 was unbelievable. Can you talk a little bit about sort of in this format, your philosophy on drafting quarterbacks? Do you usually wait this long to draft them? Is this something you'll continue to do given how it worked out this year?
No, actually, what happened was I got sniped so much that I wanted Lamar Jackson, but he was taken like maybe 2 or 3 picks ahead of me. And then I thought I'd wait for, well, being a Packer fan, I thought I'd wait for Jordan Love, but he was taking a few picks ahead of me.
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, since I got Ayuk and Kittle, I'm going to take Purdy. But he was taken. I don't know if you have the draft board, but
I'm looking.
Like
I'm
a pick or 2 ahead of me also.
I'm looking at it right now. So here's what happened. You were targeting Lamar Jackson at the 605. He goes at the 603. You get Aaron Jones. Then you were targeting Jordan Love at this would have been, I just had it in front of me. You would have targeting him at the 908. He goes at the 905. And then you're going to get Brock Purdy at the 1005. And Brock Purdy goes at the 10:02. You end up, by the way, that because Purdy went at the 10:02, you got Brian Thomas at the 10:05.
Yes,
so
that
worked out.
That worked out real nice. Yes, Brian Thomas. Oh, I didn't expect that out of him. He had a great year. Yep.
Rome Odunze was the pick that you took in when Jordan Love didn't fall to you. So I was I just did a show with Gary Kerr, who finished 20th in the FFPC main event. He drafted 9 rookies on that team. I'm looking at your roster here as far as rookies go. You obviously had Odunze, Brian Thomas. You got Caleb Williams. You took Marshawn Lloyd, the pick after that, and then you also got Will Shipley later. So I'm looking at, what is that, 5 rookies, 6 rookies there? Do you is that something that you normally like to do? Do you find value in rookies in these drafts?
The reason for Shipley was because I had Barkley so early, and Shipley was one of the later picks I had. So I thought, I'm going to cover myself there. It just worked out that way. And then Caleb Williams, being a rookie too, I had Roman Dunze, so I thought, I mean, Caleb Williams, the last 2 years at USC, I think passing and rushing touchdowns, he had 93 touchdowns. So, and then winning the Heisman and going to Chicago with the weapons that he had, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, Rome now coming on, and a pass catching running back in Swift. I just expected more out of Caleb Williams, but it just didn't happen. But luckily, like you said, in the 20th round, I got Baker
Mayfield, which is fantastic. And this is something I'm just realizing that you did. So you drafted Cade Otton in the 14th round. You released him, but then you picked him back up. Was he I went through the waiver wire of all your picks that you had grabbed. I think Otton was probably the biggest one for you. Is that something you'd agree with, that Otton was your best waiver wire claim of the season?
Yeah, I think so. And he didn't produce the first week or so, and I cut him. But then the following week, I think I picked him back up, and it just worked out because that's when, the other receivers were injured and they were going to Otton.
Right.
But as far as free agency, my defense has really paid off for me in the championship round and the 3-week playoff round. Week 15, I had Denver's defense for 21. Week 16, I had Green Bay defense for 19. Mm-hmm. And the last week, week 17, I had Philadelphia defense for 20. So that's 60 points, 3 weeks out of my defense. And I thought, instead of having a backup player, I'm not going to play. I'm going to stream defenses.
Normally, and I've changed my philosophy on this. I have looked on in championship rounds, like I play in the KFFSC. I have a great time there, and in the championship round there, I've been there a few times, and I always look at these people who carry 3 or 4 defenses, and I'm like, what are you doing? Just grab one that you like and keep these backup players in case somebody gets hurt. And now, over the last couple of years, and you are proof of this, my friend, I've changed my philosophy on it. if one of my studs goes down, I'm probably not winning anything, right?
Right.
Because there's nobody on my bench. I'm looking at your bench. Emmanuel Wilson, Raheem Mostert. These guys are not winning. They're not $1 million winning players. But if you get the right defenses on your team, and you had 4 of them, you talked about it: Philly, Denver, Green Bay, Dallas. Those are the 4 defenses that you ended on this team. You can really exploit that when it comes to the championship round, and you did.
Right.
And sometimes I think that's a bigger advantage. And now I look at it, and I'm like, that's almost the way to play it at this point. And you played it that way, and you won $1 million. So who am I to say what's the right way and wrong way to do it? But this is something that you kind of made up your mind that you were doing. Have you done this before, going into championship rounds, where you're more just trying to collect defenses and make sure that you have the best possible matchup in any given week in the championship sprint?
Yeah, that's how I play it. I don't want to go into a playoff with just one defense. Say a stud defensive player goes down, I'm not going to make up that points. So I play the matchups, and along with the kicker too. I like to have 2 kickers, and I started Brandon Aubrey all year, and but in the last week he was at Philadelphia, so I believe it was week 12. I picked up Chase McLaughlin from Tampa Bay. They're at home against Carolina, and that's who I went with. So.
I think, and I think that's important too. Obviously, you want to get that. You want to get both the kicker and that. If you are trying to beat out hundreds of teams, thousands of teams, whatever it is, every position matters. Kickers matter, defense matters, and if you outwork everybody, if you analyze it, not saying you're going to get it right every time, but you give yourself the best chance to get it right, and you got it right, or at least right enough to win a 7-figure grand prize for sure. I've been asking everybody this lately over the last month on these shows. The one player that you wish you would have drafted more of in 2024, and then a player that you did draft in a bunch of spots that you were kind of iffy on, and now you totally regret it. Obviously, you can't totally regret anything winning $1 million, but those two players, who would they be, Mike?
Jamar Chase, Jahmyr Gibbs. I wish I had more of him. And me and my brothers, we went to Vegas for the main event draft this September, and we were sitting at number 10, and we had a choice between Jamar Chase or Garrett Wilson. And Jamar Chase at the time was talking holdout, and potential holdout. He wanted a new contract. So I'm like, every win in this thing matters, and we can't take a chance on him missing week 1. We're going to lose. So we chose Garrett Wilson, and knowing that Aaron Rodgers always keys on one guy. He's always been that way, and I thought, what better receiver than Garrett Wilson, because they really don't have anybody else. Malachi Corley and Conklin and
Devontae Adams wasn't a part of the team yet, obviously, too. So it was just Wilson. You're right.
Right. And he always keyed on one guy, either Devontae Adams or Jordy Nelson. He always keyed on that one guy. I thought, okay, let's go with Garrett Wilson. And looking back, that was a mistake. But,
the other thing too, that you couldn't have known, or maybe some people did. I don't think anybody did, but we couldn't have known the Bengals defense was going to be as bad as it was. And this was Joe Burrow's best season as a pro. I mean, it's got to be his best season as a pro. And Chase just was. I mean, he's been uncoverable. Even in the games where he's quiet, he's still putting up a 15-point floor, a 17-point floor, or whatever it is. So I don't know if we'll see that again next year, but yeah, that is a regret. That would be a regret of mine, is passing on Chase for Wilson for sure.
Right.
Let's do this. Corey Walters has a question in the YouTube chat. I'll throw it up on the screen right now. In Dynasty Superflex. Now, do you play Dynasty, Mike? I don't know.
No, I don't.
No.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope, just
all right.
Draft.
So he wants to know, is Jamar Chase over Justin Jefferson in Dynasty Superflex? I think he's tied to Burrow. Well, this doesn't have to be Superflex, and quite frankly, it doesn't necessarily have to be Dynasty. I actually like Chase better than Jefferson going forward, and I think that that's not really a hot take at all. I think that's just how most people are seeing it.
Yes.
But it is interesting for redraft next year when you consider that we know what Sam Darnold is with the Vikings. Now, will he be there or not? I think he will be. I don't think they're going to let him get away. But we got drafts opening them up Mike, in the next few weeks, and it'll be interesting to see how people handle Chase versus Jefferson. It sounds like your team Chase for 2025.
Yes, definitely team Chase. I would draft Chase over Jefferson. And plus with JJ McCarthy thing, you don't know, how that's going to work out too. So
yeah, I mean, I think I think that the most obvious thing is just that they franchise Darnold and they let McCarthy recover. I've been saying like the Vikings kind of fell their way or have fallen their way into the Packers path, right? Where you draft a guy, you keep him on the bench for 2 years, 3 years or whatever, and then you let him go. You start him. And now McCarthy not only can recover from this knee, but they can franchise Darnold once, maybe twice. I don't know if they'll need to do it twice. And then McCarthy should be ready to go, I would think. And that's probably the proper way to do it.
Right.
And Jordan Addison has been great too. Did you have Jordan Addison in a bunch of spots this year, Mike?
I had him on a few teams. Yeah, he was a surprise too. And I expected him to be suspended, but he never was. And he had a great year.
Let's see here. I want to get to a couple of emails here that were specifically for you. Jerry in Bedford, Mass. Oh, this will be a good one. Jerry in Bedford, Massachusetts. We always hear Balky talk about the Packers wide receivers, Mike, but did you draft any of them this season? Congrats, man. That is Jerry in Bedford, Massachusetts. I said at the top of during all drafting season, I didn't know what to do with Packers receivers because it could be a different guy every week. So I kind of stayed away from him. How did you handle him, Mike?
Yeah, I tried to stay away from him too, because like you say, it could be a different guy every week. Christian Watson, 1 week, Wicks, Dobbs, and, Jaden Reed. A lot of people consider Jaden Reed is the best, but you look at last week, he had 1 catch for 6 yards. I try to avoid the Packer receivers because they don't have a number one like a lot of teams do.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fine for best ball, and I think we're going to see those Packers receivers slip in drafts next year because now the secret's out on them. Like that they're talented, but I think they're also leading the league in drops. I could be wrong on that. They're really talented wide receivers. Just don't ask them to catch the football. That's where we run into problems with that.
Right, exactly. They are best in best ball.
Best in best ball. Let's do one more email here. Bill in Valdosta, Georgia. Valdosta. Sorry. What hope, if any, do you have for the Bears offense next season, Mike? We kind of talked about this a little bit. Bill, thank you for the email. Appreciate it. With Caleb Williams, with Roma Dunze, I would assume Swift is going to be back. Komet should be there. We'll find out about Keenan Allen, DJ Moore. If they get a couple of linemen and a good offensive-minded coach, I mean, they're not far away. And then we could start moving these Bears up. But as it stands right now, I think a lot of these Bears offensive players are going to come at a discount in 2025 drafts.
So do I. And, I like the Bears offense. Yeah, like you said, they just needed offensive line. Caleb Williams was sacked so often this year that, they need some offensive linemen. And I think that team should be fine going forward.
The last question I have for you in the interview portion here is the one that everybody wants to know. You've just been awarded $1 million. Mike, what are you going to do with that cash? Do you even know? What are some of the ideas running through your head as far as what you want to spend this money on?
I mean, I just looked at the website today and it was added and it was unreal. I'm going to invest. I'm going to pay for my daughter's college education.
Smart. Where's she going? Does she know where she's going to school?
My other daughter just graduated from Platteville.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. That's awesome.
We'll pay that off. And we'll do some remodeling around the house and just take a much needed vacation.
Do we know where the vacation is going to be to yet, Mike?
No. No, we haven't really discussed where, but I'm sure we'll be going somewhere.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is
Yep.
fantastic. Anytime we hear that. Yeah, I don't know. Again, I'll just have to imagine it because I know I'll never look on any of my fantasy accounts and see $1 million right there, which is
It's a good feeling,
fantastic.
Bulky. You should do it.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, it's just everybody should try. Everybody should win $1 million playing fantasy football. Friends and family. How many of them how many of them know about this? Have you gotten a lot of phone calls, and emails, texts, whatever?
Yeah, since it happened, yes. But it was difficult, like when I spent Christmas with my family. I didn't want anybody to know besides my brothers, because I really didn't win anything yet. And
Right.
I know how word of mouth goes. One person will tell one person, and before you know it, they think I won already. So I didn't want to mention anything until it was over. Now everybody knows, and I've been
Now
here
everybody knows.
Yep.
I know the other thing I was going to ask you. I meant to ask you this earlier. When you said you went for a walk, wasn't it freezing out?
It was one of the few nice December days in Appleton.
Okay.
We lucked out there. Yeah. Normally you think late December in Wisconsin it's freezing, but it was a nice night out. Luckily.
Did you end up? So what time did you leave at halftime for the walk, and then how long did it last, and what were you thinking about when you were on that walk? It's because it's got to be tough to just shut your brain off from that game.
It was tough. I left starting the third quarter. Detroit got the ball and they drove it right down the field. And with over 10 minutes left in the third, it was 21-21. Nobody was stopping anybody. And the only player I had was George Kittle. And at halftime, he had 2 catches. And he had 6 more in the second half that I didn't see. And that's what did it for me. George. Yeah.
George Kittle, shout out with the one rare time that a couple of Packers fans here will shout out George Kittle for sure what he was able to do. Well, listen, man, Ferrell is having technical issues. I don't think we're going to be able to get him on tonight, which is unfortunate. You want to hang out with me for another 15 minutes, answer some more emails?
Sure. Yeah.
All right. Excellent.
Absolutely. Yep.
So you're getting bonus coverage here of fantasy football from the FFPC millionaire Mike Mehlberg here. Let's go to Vince in Dallas. Happy New Year. Now, okay, before I ask you this, you played in the FFPC Playoff Challenge before, I think.
Yes. And I will again this year.
Yeah. And you won some cash doing it too.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, this is perfect. So not only do we have an expert, we have a Playoff Challenge expert on here. Vince in Dallas, Happy New Year, guys. Would you rather roster A.J. Brown or Devonta Smith in the Playoff Challenge? Thanks so much. That is Vince in Dallas. So a few things come to mind when I hear this. Number one, we got to figure out what's going on with Jalen Hurts and his concussion, if he's going to be healthy. Because if he's not and he's not playing, then we're looking at Kenny Pickett throwing to those guys. And then at that point, Saquon Barkley becomes much more attractive. Yeah. For the sake of this question, Mike, let's assume Hurts is active.
Playing.
However, let's also assume he's not playing this week, which I don't think he is, and he did not play last week, and he missed time the week before. Might be coming in a little rusty. Brown or Smith, any of these guys leap out as a guy that you would rather have when you consider, potential, how many teams that Brown and Smith are going to be rostered on? Is there anything there? How do you feel about this?
I like A.J. Brown over Devonta Smith. I also think that Jalen Hurts will be playing. I mean, it's a concussion. It's not like a leg or anything. So he's already been out for a couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. And when he got concussed, he actually wanted to come back in the game right away, but they won't let him. I think with him missing again this week, I think he'll be back in the wild card game.
And that's probably going to be against Green Bay, and that'll be a fun game to watch. I think Philly would come out ahead, so I think you're getting multiple games out of either one of those Eagles receivers, but we'll see. Joe in Chicago, hey fellas, am I missing the boat if I play James Cook over Josh Allen in the FFPC Playoff Challenge? Joe, thank you for the email. I wouldn't say you're missing the boat. I think more so this year. I mean, last year when in the challenge you had Stephon Diggs, you had Dalton Kincaid, you had Josh Allen. Josh Allen's still the highest, and James Cook. Josh Allen's still the highest rostered guy. But this year, man, you look at that Bills offense, it's different. There's no Diggs. Kincaid has not developed into the receiver that we receiving tight end that we thought he was going to be in Buffalo. At least he hasn't yet. So I think if it does come down to Cook over Allen, I don't think there's anything wrong with that when you consider there's going to be a ton of people using Josh Allen as their quarterback.
Yeah, that's the drawback of going with Allen. I do think that Buffalo is the team to beat. I don't think it's going to be Kansas City this year. I think Buffalo is the team to beat. But like you said, I think so many teams are going to have Josh Allen. It's not a mistake to pivot and go to James Cook. I mean, who else have they got? They got Shakir and Keon Coleman. You can't really start them. And like you said, Kincaid just hasn't been what we thought he was going to be going into the year. So, yeah, I could see a few James Cook teams. And like you said, everybody's going to have Josh Allen.
I think you're setting yourself up to play catch up if you play Kincaid or Shakir. So I think you're right in that. I think it's got to be Cook or Allen, and you're not missing the boat at all. I mean, Cook could be the guy. I was just talking about earlier tonight on the other show, on the Road of His High Stakes Lowdown, that there was a few years ago in this challenge where it was the Seattle-Denver Super Bowl where Seattle just slayed the Broncos, and the guy who won it had the Seahawks defense. And there was probably a lot of people like, what the hell are you doing rostering the Seahawks defense here? You got to be going with Russell Wilson or Lynch or one of these other guys. But it ended up being the Seahawks defense that carried him to victory. John in Lenoir, I think it's Lenoir, North Carolina. I'm butchering so many names tonight. I apologize. If I want to fade Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry in the challenge, is the smarter play Zay Flowers or Mark Andrews? Here's to a great 2025. That is John in Lenoir, North Carolina. So when you look at the Ravens this year, they're another one of these teams where we can go a bunch of different ways. And I think those are the four, biggest ones. And I throw Tucker, the defense in there. I get it, but I like these four better. I think it's going to be split between Jackson and Henry. However, I didn't realize this, Mike. This is the first time the Ravens have ever had a Pro Bowl receiver in Zay Flowers. And Mark Andrews, I was talking with Bob Harris from Football Guys about this last night. He's like, Andrews is so touchdown dependent, but he does catch a lot of touchdowns. So there's something to be said there. I don't know which way or how would you handle the Ravens, whether you had one team or whether you had multiple teams in the challenge?
If I was going to go away from Lamar and Derrick Henry, I would go Zay Flowers. Andrews, he still got Likely there. Besides Flowers, what are they? Bateman.
Yeah, you're not going to play. I mean, I wouldn't play Bateman at least. Yeah.
So yeah, I would lean Zay Flowers if I had to choose between them two.
I should have asked you this earlier too. In looking at your lineup or in your draft for this $1 million team that you had, George Kittle you picked in the 5th round. You took Cade Otton in the 14th, Juwan Johnson in the 18th. Do you normally like to have 3 tight ends, and how do you normally like to attack the position in redraft leagues?
Yeah, I like to have, with the tight end premium, the more tight ends, the better. I mean, Kittle worked out great for me this year. He had a great year. And you never know with Juwan Johnson. He's had good years in the past. So,
right.
Cade Otton, I thought, looked all right. So,
do you normally, when you're drafting these teams, do you normally like to get like a top 5, top 6 tight end, or is that not a huge deal for you?
I try to in redraft. Yeah. And these, I try to get a top tight end.
Do you ever load up and draft too early, or maybe like 3 in the first 7 or 8 rounds?
Yeah, I actually, in my last draft, I drafted, Kelsey, Laporta, and Ingram in my first four picks. And that team did quite well, but it didn't do as well as this one.
Well, I would imagine. Yeah, I would. Yes, I would. You can only win $1 million prize in the Fantasy Pros. And I know you played in the main event as well. Now that should be your next site, is winning Fantasy Pros and the main event in the same year. And then that would be one hell of a vacation. It probably would also involve one hell of a cold walk on Monday Night Football, if that would ever come to be. The thing is with that team, it probably was doing good until Ingram got hurt, right? Very well. And it happens. We got to deal with injuries. Don in Bakersfield, California, you kind of answered half this question already, Mike, but we'll ask it. Who do you guys have in the Super Bowl right now? I need to know for building my playoff rosters. You like Buffalo winning the whole thing. Who do you like coming out of the NFC?
I like Detroit. I think Detroit's got the offense to stick with anybody. And, Jahmyr Gibbs is very impressive. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Laporta, and Goff is having a great year. Their defense is a little shaky, but that offense is right now unstoppable. And they've been putting up, 32 points a game. So,
yeah,
I like Detroit.
It seems so effortless, too, like when they're putting up all these points. I know they're trying to get, I think Alex Anzalone might be coming back the second week of the playoffs. They're trying to get Hutchinson back too, which would be a huge benefit for their pass rush.
Yep.
One thing that could very well happen. If it does happen, these guys will have not played football in a while. And it's not a cure-all. It's more of a Band-Aid on this defense. And that's what scares me about Detroit. You can outscore people throughout the regular season, but you got to be able to get your defense off the field when it comes down to it. And that's what I think is going to prevent them from getting there. I think that Detroit is the best team in the NFC. But tell me if this makes sense. I think Minnesota, regardless of what happens on Sunday night between those two teams,
Yep.
I trust Minnesota's defense to make more plays when it counts in the playoffs. So even though I think Detroit is the better team, I think Minnesota's built as it stands right now with health. I think Minnesota's built for the postseason a little bit better. So that's why I think they come out of the NFC. And until further notice, Mike, I cannot pick against the Chiefs. I've done it the last couple of years. They've embarrassed me. So I'm picking a rematch of Super Bowl IV, Kansas City and Minnesota. That's who I have in the Super Bowl. Mike likes Detroit and Buffalo, which I could very well see. And that'd be a fun Super Bowl too. Lions.
Yes, it would be a fun Super Bowl. Yeah. And like you said, they play each other Sunday night and it's in Detroit. And if Detroit wins, which I think they will, they'll have the number 1 seed and home field throughout that. They're going to be tough to beat. So
I'll tell you this, if Anzalone and Hutchinson come back in midseason form, I don't know how you can. I can't make a good argument against the Lions in that. Now, I don't think they will come back and be hitting like they were in October and November. But if they are, good luck, rest of the NFL. Good luck. That is it for emails. I do want to touch on some other stuff that we found out. Some players that aren't playing in Week 18. That their seasons are over with, and I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on them for the upcoming year, Mike, just to touch on a few of them to close out the show. Daniel Oyefusi from ESPN, I think he's from ESPN, reported that David Njoku is not playing against the Ravens this weekend, and he has been placed on injured reserve. He was unbelievable at the end of 2023 with Joe Flacco, and obviously was less than unbelievable for the majority of 2024. Had some injuries this season. Only played in 11 games, 505 yards. That was his fewest in 3 years. He should, and we'll talk about the Browns quarterback situation in a little bit, but it sounds like Deshaun Watson will be on the team, but he won't necessarily be playing next year. Njoku is a guy, and Bob Harris was talking about this last night. He thinks he's a fringe top 5 fantasy tight end in 2025. And I was thinking about it. I'm like, I could see it, but man, pulling the trigger with him as the 5th or 6th tight end off the board, I don't know if I could do it, especially after what I saw this season, Mike.
Yeah, that might be a little bit too high. I mean, I do like him, but top 5, that might be a little bit too high with all the great tight ends in the league. I like McBride, Arizona.
Oh, yeah.
Just Kelsey, until he slows down, you have to stick with him. And yeah, there's a lot of good tight ends in the league. Top 5 is a reach for me.
Do you think, and I've been saying this the last few weeks, when we look at the top tight ends this past year in the order they were drafted, you had Laporta as the first guy off the board, kind of disappointed for that high of a draft pick. McBride, great. Travis Kelce had a lot of misses this year. Had a lot of missed weeks as far as fantasy production. Dalton Kincaid, we already talked about, kind of a letdown.
Yep.
Mark Andrews is coming on, which is good. Evan Engram was good, but he wasn't healthy, which was kind of the knock on him for the majority of his career. And then Kyle Pitts, we're done with him.
Yeah, all done.
Kittle was good. you had Ferguson and Njoku, and then you had Bowers. So my point here is
Bowers.
When you have all those tight ends that were up at the top, and we talked about a lot of quasi busts up there, and then you have Brock Bowers being drafted as the 11th tight end off the board. You had Tucker Kraft being drafted as the 30th tight end off the board. You had Jonnu Smith as the 24th tight end drafted in 24th tight end off the board. Zach Ertz was tight end 27. Do you see, and I know it's early, do you see the tight ends kind of falling and people not be willing to take these elite guys as early as they did this year because of how those early tight ends maybe didn't pan out in the way that a lot of people thought they would?
Yeah, that could be. And I look for Brock Bowers. I see them drafting a quarterback high next year, and he looked great with, what they had. So you give him a nice quarterback, sky's the limit for him.
Now, this goes back to my Jake Delhomme, Steve Smith theorem, where so you're right, by the way, Bowers, horrible offense, probably the worst quarterback situation in the league, if not the worst, one of the worst. And yet he was the fantasy tight end one. I mean, he broke Ditka's record, which stood for, 1,600 years or whatever it was. It was a record that probably was never going to be broken. And then Bowers did it. And then he set the record for most catches by any rookie ever. It was insane. My concern is they draft the quarterback high, and this guy is really good. And when you have a really good quarterback, he's able to throw to the open guy. And if Bowers is getting all the attention, he's not going to be open. Somebody else will. A non-capable quarterback like Jake Delhomme will lock on to one receiver the entire time. Because he's not good enough to see all the other, go through the progressions. But he's good enough to get Steve Smith the ball, which is why Steve Smith had all those great years. Yep. I don't want the Raiders to get as good of a quarterback. I need them to get like an okay quarterback, because an okay quarterback will still be locked on to Bowers, but he'll still be able to move the chains. That's my concern. Don't get a world beater at quarterback if you're the Raiders. But quite frankly, he's quarterback proof. What he did this season was unbelievable.
He showed that he was quarterback proof, right?
Did you get him in any leagues? I mean, I know I got him in leagues this year. Was it a bunch?
Yeah, I got him in a bunch of leagues. Yeah, I was high on Brock Bowers coming out of Georgia. Yeah. I liked him come out of college. So I got maybe 8 or 9 Brock Bowers leagues.
Okay. Which is definitely more than I had of them for sure. Let's go with this goes into the Browns question here at quarterback. Jeremy Fowler from ESPN reported that the Browns are going to be looking at, quote, any veteran quarterback with starters talent. Watson under contract, but Fowler's reporting that the belief is he's never going to play a meaningful down for the Browns ever again. Now, the Browns could draft a quarterback early next year, but Fowler's report saying that they could be looking at veterans like Kirk Cousins, like Sam Darnold, if he's not franchised. They could also bring back Jameis Winston, which I'd kind of like to see. He threw for over 2,000 yards, 13 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Yeah, I know. In the 12 games that he played this season. This is wild because whoever the Browns get should be an upgrade over what they've had. And now they get to work with Njoku. They get to work with Jerry Jeudy, who has been unbelievable. When you look at the Browns offense, we're kind of hating on it right now. It could actually be pretty decent if they push the right button next season.
Right, I think so too. I like the Kirk Cousins idea you just had. With Atlanta now having Penix probably going to start. Yeah, if they move on from Kirk Cousins, that'd be a great spot for him. In Cleveland with Njoku and Jerry Jeudy.
The Falcons you mentioned. I like what I'm seeing with Penix so far. Are you going to be bullish on that Falcons offense next year? Are you going to be targeting guys like Bijan Robinson, Drake London, maybe Michael Penix as a later round quarterback, a backup quarterback too? What do you foresee with the Falcons coming up in 2025?
I like all them studs you just mentioned. I like Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Pitts. I'm staying away from him. He's had
I'm done.
Years in a row where, but yeah, Michael Penix being a running quarterback like he is and the weapons they have, that's potential late round pick too. And then see how it works out. He won't be my first quarterback,
right?
But just to see how it works out.
When do you usually start drafting? When does drafting season begin for you? Historically,
July, June,
Okay.
July, yeah.
Um,
I watch football. I do football every day, 365. I don't start paying attention to football in August or September. I do it year round. It's just my passion. So that's what I like to do.
So you said your brothers, I mean, did they co-own some of these leagues with you and help you with waivers and waivers on Wednesdays and lineups on Sundays?
Yeah. My brother Wayne did that with me. We had a couple teams together, and I believe we won a couple divisions. And actually, Christmas morning, I texted him. I was going to go with Odunze going into week 17. But I texted him about 10 o'clock, and I said, give me a call when you got a minute. This is Christmas morning. And he called me right away, and we talked over an hour. And I said, what do you think about possibly going with Jalen Warren this week? He said, what? I mean, a backup running back against one of the top rush defenses in the league? I'm like, yeah, I know. But all the reading I did that morning, I relooked at my lineup, and I'm like, all the reading I did and the rankings, all the sites I have, they projected Jalen Warren with more points than Odunze. And so we talked it over an hour, and he checked on it and I checked on it. And it was about maybe 15 to 20 minutes before the Christmas game, Kansas City at Pittsburgh, that I made that switch. And if I didn't make that switch, it was a $925,000 difference.
Oh my God.
I didn't know it was a $925,000 decision I was making at the time, but that's what it was.
I can't even. How do you even think about that? To this. So Warren ended up 71 rushing yards,
16.
five catches, 41 yards. So yes, you're 16.2. I think he had.
Yep.
And then I don't know. And Odunze, did he even hit double digits?
He had one catch for 15 yards, so that's 2.5 points, and that was the difference between Odunze and Jalen Warren. My switch in that.
I can't. Can you imagine looking back if you guys would have stuck with Odunze and not put Warren in? Can you imagine thinking about that right now? I mean, it's just that's the kind of thing and I know there's people watching this right now that are like, yeah, Balky, I made decisions like that maybe cost me the $1 million too. Like, man, fantasy is just crazy when it gets to this time of year. Unbelievable stuff. Let's do one more thing. Let's talk about the Cardinals running back situation. James Conner is, I believe, placed on IR. I know he's not playing. Denny Sarek had this report that Conner is not playing Week 18 against the Niners. 1,094 rushing yards and 8 touchdowns. He averaged 80 rushing yards a game last year, only 68 this year. However, 47 catches, 414 yards, and he caught a touchdown. That was way better than what he did in 2023. This is a weird situation, Mike, because they drafted Trey Benson in the second round, but they also inked Conner to a 2-year extension towards the end of the season. Are we just in for a repeat in 2025 with the backfield that we saw in 2024? I guess I'm more distrustful that Conner is going to be as healthy as he was next year as he was this year. But I got to believe that it might be status quo at running back between Conner and Benson again next season.
I think so too. I think they give the rock to Conner, but they always, project him to be injured like he has in the past, and that's why they drafted Benson, which is a great back. So they're going to ride Conner until, if he gets injured, they'll go with Benson.
Yeah, and I think that's the way it is. And I think you should probably be drafting him in a similar way next year. Don't fear the injury, but understand the realization that it could happen. And Benson would be pretty nice if Conner were ever to go down. Tom Smith has one question for you, Mike. Now that you won the big prize, any chance you make it to Vegas for the live drafts? Well, you were there last year. Are you coming back again this year?
Absolutely. I think anybody that's on the fence and not knowing whether to do it or not, I highly recommend it. You guys put on a great event. the watch party. I seen you there, Balky and Ferrell, but maybe in this next year I'll come over and say hello.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, for sure.
Yeah, it was a great event, and we'll definitely be back.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. I can't wait to see you. It'll be a lot of fun. And Mike, thank you not only for hanging out with us tonight, but for pinch hitting for Ferrell for the full hour when you didn't know you were going to do it. Technology, man, but you were great. I learned so much from you. Congratulations. Just surreal stories. The Jalen Warren thing, the second half Monday Night Football frozen walk that you went on, although it wasn't all that frozen. And then the phone call you get from your brother, just unbelievable, man. I love hearing these stories. Nothing but congratulations to you. And so awesome that we had the $35 FFPC playoff challenge winner come from Appleton last year, and now the $1 million winner from the Fantasy Pros Championship this year in Appleton, Wisconsin. I'm telling you, if you want to dominate fantasy football, Mike, this is where you got to come. Just come to Appleton and you'll win something big. Thanks again, dude. Be good. We will continue to follow you on the X at Mike Mehlberg. And don't be a stranger. I might have another interview lined up for you on the radio with my local station here. That's kind of up in the air, but we'll see what happens there. I'll let you know, and I'll be in touch. Be good, man. And definitely see you in Vegas maybe before then. You never know.
Yes. Thank you. Happy New Year to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Mike. Happy New Year to you. Mike Mehlberg, the 2024 Fantasy Pros Championship winner. Oh, my heart is racing from that Jalen Warren Roma Dunes. I still can't believe that. Just absolutely incredible stuff. You got to push the right buttons. Mike pushed the right buttons to win the $1 million this year. Just crazy. I feel like I'm living it right now, just talking to him, which was fantastic. That will complete tonight's show tonight. Whew, what a doozy. I need to calm down here. Mike Mehlberg, Ferrell Elliott, who was not on, and I apologize for that. He will be back next week. The FFPC, Rob and Bryce, thank you to all of you for making this show so much fun. We will be back at 10 p.m. next Friday. In case you missed the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown that I did earlier tonight, I talked with 2024 FFPC Main Event 20th place team owner Gary Kerr. We got through a lot of stuff, not only as a recap of this season, but playoff challenge advice there as well. And then we will be back with the Lowdown this coming Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern with the 2023-2024 $100,000 FFPC playoff champ, Cullen Hoffman. He will rejoin me on these airwaves, and we'll talk playoff challenge lineups for 2025 as well. You can check out Thursday night's High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network with Bob Harris and myself from Football Guys and SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. We did that show last night. A lot of fun. Got into a lot of stuff with drafts next year as well as playoff challenge lineup building. And then we will be back with our world-famous FFPC Playoff Challenge extravaganza with legendary upside Steph Miller. She will rejoin me on that show. We'll build some lineups to help you out that night. Join the world-famous FFPC Playoff Challenge if you haven't yet. 2 great contests, same format as we've always done. No draft, no salary cap. Just choose the 12 players that you want. Watch them ride throughout the playoffs. Win $500,000 or $100,000, $200 or $35 to enter. And then this will be the last week of the FFPC Weekly Challenge, the Week 18 Weekly Challenge going on right now. Again, no draft or salary cap there. Enter for as little as $35, win up to $2,500. Just go to myffpc.com. Myffpc.com is where to go for that. And you can become a $500,000 winner yet this season before we put the 2024-2025 season to bed. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, and get notified each and every time we go live, which will be Tuesday night with Cullen Hoffman on the RotoViz High Stakes Slowdown. For my guest tonight, Mike Mehlberg, I have been Eric Balkman. This is the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the FFPC YouTube channel. Be good. We'll talk with you real soon.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com. It was broadcast live and was watched around the world. Balky and Ferrell will be back next week with more analysis, more interviews, and more advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk with you again next week.
Forgive me. I totally forgot to do this, ladies and gentlemen. I've been flustered. We were trying to get Ferrell on tonight, and it didn't happen because of some technical difficulties. Obviously, the Wi-Fi in Las Vegas isn't the most reliable. But to James Hicks and Scott Christian, who always tune in for Oinker, he says, good night, good luck in Week 18, and good luck in the FFPC World Famous Playoff Challenge, which is coming up. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Crazy stuff from Mike tonight. Just understand that this is the kind of stuff that it takes. And sometimes you just need the ball bounce your way. Sometimes you just need a feeling and a little inkling of who to start and who to bench. That's what Mike had. $1 million later, here we are. Great stuff from him. Enjoy Week 18. Enjoy the playoff challenge. And I'll talk with you next week. Thanks so much for watching.